When I used to work at Snowmass, I would take my high-level kids through the super pipe at the end of the day. Now, the super pipe, the 22-foot tall super pipe, was typically an activity reserved for level 8 students. On this day, I had level 7s. Now, we had a great day. It was amazing conditions, that perfect temperature for that grippy hero snow, and the kids were crushing it. And as we're heading down to the base, I hear this voice in the back of my head that says, you know, that super pipe would be pretty awesome right now. But you know what? That's not the appropriate decision for level 7 class, so I shook it off. But as we're getting a little bit closer to the turnoff for the big park, I hear that voice again. Well, they started as a level 7. I bet they're pretty much a level 8 by now. So there we are, standing at the top of the super pipe, and I'm explaining the safety protocols, giving examples of what to do and what not to do. And once in a while, a local freestyle pro would drop in midway down the pipe, throw a quick flare, and be on their way. And if you don't know what a flare is, it's like a Lincoln loop or a cartwheel. They throw their feet over their head, back around, and continue on the way. It was cool to watch, and the kids loved it. Now, my first clue on how this was going to go should have been the intensity that I saw on Marco's face. One by one, my class dropped in, making nice controlled turns up and down the walls. All the while, Marco is staring down the pipe with a quiet focus. He drops in, and then he just goes straight. And I was like, what a waste of a run. But just as he's getting to the end of the pipe at approximately top speed, he drops his hip to the right and launches all 22 feet up the super pipe wall, and then proceeds to throw his feet over his head. And I think that was as far as he had planned, because as he stalls out vertically upside down and he's floating there, seemingly moving in slow motion, I thought to myself, why did I take my kids into the super pipe? So have you ever thought about why you do what you do when you teach? It's been a fascinating question for me to think about. And at the end of the presentation, I'd love to hear your thoughts on why you do what you do. When we think about making better decisions, it's helpful to know that there's a space between a stimulus and our response, these fleeting moments that exist after that voice pops into your head, but before you make any decision. And having awareness to that space gives us choice. It gives us an opportunity to take meaningful action that authentically benefits our purpose. Having a clear understanding of what our purpose is seems like something we should know, but when I ask myself that question, I find myself wandering through assumptions. I teach skiing, I manage people, I train instructors. But if I follow that up with why, then it sounds more like I want to create learning and performance environments where people thrive, where they're challenged and supported, where they're encouraged to think creatively, stretch their skills, take healthy risks, and have the autonomy to explore what is possible. I want the people I work with to feel valued, heard, and empowered. Now, within that context, there's something definitive. Knowing my purpose drives my decisions. I have specific outcomes for which I can create specific actions. And knowing why we do what we do gives our actions meaning. We become driven by a clear and sustainable purpose. Purpose and meaning are the motivational engines that provide us with the resilience, focus, and energy for us to pursue our goals and intentions. But it all starts with why we do what we do. I was reminded of this recently when I was looking after one of my instructor's kids. She was out teaching a lesson, running a little bit late, but his name was Luca, and he's 5 years old. I had some work to finish up, so I said, hey, Luca, why don't you come hang out in the office with me? And in this particular office, we have the control panel that monitors all of the security cameras within the River Run Kids building. And when Luca walked in, he was immediately fascinated for about 15 seconds, at which point I can only believe that he saw his future as the a private security officer, and he started reaching for the controls. And I said, Luca, please don't touch that. And Luca looked at me with a face of 5-year-old defiance, and he said, why? And I said, well, because I said so. And Luca said, why? And I said, well, because I'm in charge. And Luca said, why? And I said, well, Luca, your mom's running late, and it's my job to make sure that we're making good decisions and staying safe until she gets here. To which this 5-year-old philosopher said, why? And just as my frustrations were starting to rise, I thought to myself, this guy's making a lot of good points right now. That question why is important, and it needs to be irritatingly clear. I think about what answers to his repeated questioning might have satisfied his curiosity, or maybe I was just getting harassed by a 5-year-old. Nonetheless, I think sometimes I fall short of asking myself for the reasons I make certain decisions or engage in certain behavior. I now better understand that I do what I do for a wide range of basic biological to advanced psychological needs, and my personal needs can disrupt my desired outcomes. I remember early in my role as training manager, I would get feedback from my boss, Dave Lumberg, that sometimes I would use a vocabulary that wasn't always intelligible and that I should speak more simply. At the time, I was pretty frustrated by this. I said, Dave, growing up, school wasn't easy. I couldn't read very well. I had a hard time keeping up. I had to go to special ed classes. And now you're telling me that the words I use are too big? Do you know how hard I worked not to be the dumb kid? And Dave said with some trepidation, so do you think maybe that's why you use big words? And that made me realize that while I'm sitting here telling myself that I need an impressive lexicon to communicate better, that maybe I was just doing it for my own recognition that I'm smart enough to be here. My personal need for recognition was disrupting my desired outcome. What I wanted to do was communicate clearly, be articulate with the best words. But it seems why I was doing it was to make sure people didn't see me as the dumb kid anymore. I wanted to be seen as competent. Understanding the why is how we authentically benefit the what. We need to continue questioning why we do things. This might seem hard or unnecessary as we become more certain about what we do, but I believe that continuing to ask why is at the core of all development. And this isn't a new idea. It's the first step in our teaching and learning cycle. The difference is that assessment is not exclusive to the student. By continuing to question why we do things, we can continue to affirm or adjust what we do. In this process, I've realized that my decisions are sometimes selfish in nature, meeting my needs, but ignoring the best choices of the needs of others. I have to wonder, do my lessons only reflect my view of what good skiing is? Do they lack the empathy it would take to customize the lesson to my students' needs and capacities? Am I truly making the best decisions, or am I simply defaulting to a paint-by-numbers process that I've developed to conveniently deal with different developmental phases? Do the outcomes that I'm pushing promise that I contribute to the overall best self of the student, or am I subjecting them to my objectified view of what is good and bad? And have my years of knowing made me so detached from my students' reality that I hide behind the assumption that my answers are absolute? And how would my teaching change if I truly answered the question, why do I do what I do? It makes me think, what would happen to those standard answers I have for every situation? How would my question to answer ratio change if I taught in a truly empathetic way? Who would be talking more, me or the student? Does the manner in which I teach reflect caring and concern for the student, or does it reflect that I teach as the expert, holding my students as less than competent in the process of learning, even though they own the learning, the emerging language that flows from our interactions, and everything gained from our time together? That learning is their victory. Professionally, we put so much time and thought into figuring out the what. And we do that to where we think the what is what we teach. But whose needs are we trying to meet? How do we create that unmistakable grin on students' faces when something just clicks for them? An insight that lifts them to new levels? What is it in our purpose that ensures a return lesson is given because we've ignited that learning addiction in our student? How do we have to show up in order to be the best learner in a lesson and not just the best knower or doer? How do we get kids to challenge themselves beyond our assumptions? What are we capable of teaching, and what do we have to relegate to be learned without any of our doing? How do we have to answer the question why we teach in order to accomplish this? Curiosity drives us faster and further. But as instructors, we've worked so hard to become competent. For so much of my development, I've aspired to be the expert. I wanted to have a solution for every problem, an answer for every question. And yet now I'm realizing that some of the best questions we can ask are the ones that we don't yet have answers to. I think that knowing is a finite statement within an infinite game. As we gain knowledge, we risk losing our sense of wonder, even though it was that wonder that gave us the knowledge in the first place. Think back to the last time you got lost. Not knowing where you were demands attention to detail, second-guessing assumptions, reflecting on where you've been. Now compare that to your everyday drive home. I hope I'm not alone in this, but sometimes I leave my office, I get in my car and I drive home, and I don't think I can tell you anything that happened along the way. Our belief that we have it all figured out diminishes our potential for curiosity. As soon as we stop questioning, we stop developing. Curiosity needs to be celebrated, exemplified, and promoted. As I've explored this question, why do I do this? It surprised me how little my thoughts had to do with skiing. And I mean that in the mechanical sense, the reverse engineering of right and left. I love that stuff, but I don't think it's why I'm here. For me, skiing has been a vehicle that's taken me so much further than down a hill. When I was 8, it gave me a sense of belonging when I left my friends in Texas and moved to Minnesota. In high school, it allowed me to feel accomplished when I was struggling to learn in traditional education. Joining a race team showed me how to be a meaningful part of a community. Coaching 8-year-olds how to jump off tabletops taught me patience. The mentorship and guidance skiing has given me has produced goals and pursuits outside of myself. Skiing is awesome, but there's so much more than skiing that makes it that way. Now, if you remember, we left Marco hanging upside down 22 feet above the base of the super pipe, vertically upside down. And as he starts to fall head first, he hits the transition of the super pipe perfectly and slides safely down to the bottom, and he was all smiles and giggles. And I got there and I remember being so relieved that he was okay. But since when has okay ever been anyone's goal? We have a responsibility to our students, to the industry, to our organization, to create an experience that elevates the average, that is unforgettable, not just because of lesson content, but because of the interactions, the life experiences, the adventure that leaves them feeling competent and empowered to continue exploring what is possible. It's not what we teach that can provide this. It's why we do it. So I'll ask you again, why do you do what you do?